I'm going to tell you a story. It's known as Ruskin's paradox. There was once a man who made great wealth, then took a boat to return to his family. He took all his riches with him in one bag, filled with gold. He carried the sack of gold with him. Then the boat began to sink. So when he realized this, he fastened the bag of gold to his belt and said, "I'm going to fasten it very tightly, otherwise I'll lose my gold." When the captain ordered to abandon ship, he obeyed. He plunged into the deep, but he could no longer swim because the gold was dragging him down. So he went under. So then here's my question. Did he have the gold, or did the gold have him?
November 2006, in the north of the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. The angry villagers have taken over the beach. They adamantly oppose the development of a gold mine in Tokatindung, just near their homes and fishing grounds. No one listens to them. They only have their despair left.
The people here do not agree with the company doing anything in this sea. We do not agree. It doesn't matter what they do, we will stop them.
The beach's control station doesn't resist them for very long. The police cautiously do not intervene. For 3 days, the fishing boats block the bay, keeping industrials from disembarking an entire gold refining plant. But on a Sunday morning, while the villagers were at church, the boat attempted to dock once again.
We don't want any boats coming in. If a boat comes in, we'll set it on fire, won't we? We're here waiting for that boat. If it comes in, we'll set it ablaze. Right?
The villagers are furious and determined. But across from them, there are guns.
The police on the boat asked us, "Do you want us to shoot?" They said, "Clear off, clear off." I said, "Shoot if you want to, but we will not move because this is our home."
Fortunately, there was no confrontation on that day. That was 4 years ago. The villagers' battle is still carrying on. They're not the only ones to be indignant about a project like this.
There will be a devastating effect, very destructive.
Katrien is German. She has lived in Indonesia for 18 years. An anthropologist and true nature lover, she runs a diving centre on the beautiful beach of Pulisan. To her, the gold mine is clearly a threat.
There will be devastating effect, not only for the tourism itself, but also for the economy of the province in general, because the 3 main pillars of the provincial economy are tourism, fishery, and agriculture. So tourism, of course, will be affected overall in a damage to its image, because if it's known to the outside world that this is a mining province, a gold mining province, the attraction is diminishing. Then the other effect is on the nature itself, because vast parts of the nature will be affected. If they dispose it into the sea, the tailings, the ocean will be polluted, contaminated.
The Tokatindung mine is located about 35 kilometers northeast of Manado, the capital of North Sulawesi. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's an extraordinary biodiversity site that led to the implementation of several nature reserves. In this paradise between sea and sky, 18,000 traditional fishermen make a decent living from their activity. They are proud to be able to send their kids to school. The region also lives off of agriculture and tourism. The Lembe Strait, renowned for its extraordinary wildlife, attracts divers from all over the world. This harmony is now in jeopardy. It is here, in this bay, 3 kilometers from the coast, that the managers of the mine had planned to discharge its highly toxic tailings. They were allegedly supposed to remain on the ocean floor. But international marine biologists and oceanographers spoke out loudly against this solution. To them, the very strong local currents would have inevitably lifted the tailings back up, which would have contaminated the food chain. The Lembe Strait is a mythical place on account of its seabed that provides a home for many rare and strange species. Divers and photographers come from all over the world to dip their flippers into the strait and encounter frogfish, pygmy and giant seahorses, nudibranches, blue-ringed octopuses, leaf fish, stargazers, giant hairy anglerfish, Pegasus sea moths, and other rhinoperes. Denise and Gerhard come here every year from Germany to take advantage of the strait's underwater wonders. They would be very sad if one day they had to dive elsewhere.
The effects of that poison would be fatal for nature. I think that this beautiful underwater world would truly be jeopardized. So would man's living environment and that of local fish. I think the Indonesian government and the owners of the mines must really make sure that no damage, no long-term damage, is inflicted upon the environment. Otherwise, it'd be best to abandon the project as soon as possible.
The tourists aren't the only ones getting worried in this small corner of Indonesia. Here they know perfectly well the devastation brought about by gold mines.
So the first large-scale gold mine was a gold mine in the Buyat region, southeast of Manado, about a 4-hour drive from Manado, the provincial capital. And this gold mine was operated by Newmont Indonesia, which is an American company. And actually it was closed down because of the devastating effects on the environment. They released the tailings into the sea. And up to now, people in the area around Buyat village are suffering very much.
As for Buyat itself, one early June morning in 2006, practically the entire village had to be evacuated. 66 families left, taking everything they could with them so that they could be resheltered about 100 kilometers away. The situation had blown up 2 years earlier. An epidemic of skin and neurological diseases had mobilized the Indonesian Environment Ministry to act. The scientists who were sent there discovered traces of arsenic and mercury in the bay water, at the very site where the American company Newmont was dumping its tailings. The Indonesian state summoned the company to court, asking for nearly $150 million. But Newmont denies any responsibility and maintains that the diseases are due to bad hygiene and poverty. The proceedings lasted 21 months. But very early on, Newmont threatened to reconsider its investments in Indonesia if the company was declared guilty. Their argument was right on target. The mining company was declared innocent. It left behind tears and a devastated village, now deserted.
Many people died from tumors, nervous disease, cancer, and there were so many miscarriages, and well, it was all hidden, and so the people in the long term are the losers.
But there are not only losers when it comes to gold mines. 12,000 kilometers away, in a totally different world, prices are fixed for this gold that fuels such lust after money and that threatens the seabed of North Sulawesi. On November the 8th, 2010, as the US Federal Reserve announces its intention to pump $600 billion into supporting economic growth, the ounce of gold, 31 grams, exceeds $1,400, an absolute record. Every day, in the London market, an average of 485 tons of gold are traded. This is where, twice a day, the price of gold is determined. Since the 1970s, the ambience has changed quite a bit, but its workings haven't really.
It's 10:20, the city. The representatives of the four houses specialised in the gold business, Johnson Matthey, McCutt and Goldsmith, Samuel Montague and Sharps Pixley, each leave their respective establishments to see Nathan Mayer Rothschild, bullion broker to the Bank of England, where, since September the 12th, 1919, gold fixing sessions have taken place twice a day.
Today, the 5 members of the London gold fixing are the Deutsche Bank, Barclays, Nova Scotia, HSBC, and us, Société Générale.
They still get together twice a day, but each from their own trading rooms. They inform their own clients in real time on price variations, depending on the offers and demands for 12.5 kilogram gold bars.
If the number of bars bought is the same as the number of bars to sell, at that moment, the price is correct for the day, for that fixing, and the price is fixed.
You want to buy 150 kilos?
If, however, the number of buyers is greater than the number of sellers, then at that point we'll raise the price until it balances out. So that can last a bit of time, generally between 5 and 10 minutes.
There, the offer balances the demand. The world price of gold is fixed at $41.45. It is 10.50.
That was 40 years ago. Since then, the price of the ounce has multiplied by 40. There is clearly enough there to whet appetites throughout the world. Even if it means upsetting a region's economy, or putting its population and environment in danger. In Rinondoran today, the control station has been rebuilt by the owners of the mine. There is even a quay now, and 7 kilometers of road through the jungle, linking the sea to the 40,000 hectare concession, permanently taken from agriculture and forest. Archipelago Resources, an Australian company, operates here by way of its Indonesian subsidiary, MSM. Its management refuses to answer any questions. They're under the protection of the Indonesian authorities. Here, it is forbidden to film. The only official images of the mine date back to 2007. An open house day was held to reassure the populations after a mudslide that was intensified by the deforestation. But ever since then, the mine's entrance has been forbidden to any camera. The only information available is provided by the company itself on its website. Archipelago Resources is quoted in the secondary market of the London Stock Exchange, but has never extracted gold yet. The Tokotindung concession contains over 50 tons of gold, which will be extracted during 8 years through 5 open-pit mines. To extract the gold, the company decided on a classic process in which cyanide is necessary. It's a highly toxic reagent, and so are its degradation products. To obtain 3 grams of gold, you must crush and chemically treat 1 ton of ore. The company plans on abandoning over 100 million tons of waste at the site. 20 million of these tons will be cyanide tailings, which are also full of arsenic and mercury. This heralds a disaster for the entire region. And yet there are good practice procedures that every gold mine in the world can apply, particularly an international cyanide management code. Unfortunately, neither Archipelago nor MSM are signatories of it. This is unacceptable for the population that denounces a giant corruption scheme and small arrangements between Archipelago and the central government. These arrangements have led Jakarta to nullify any of the prohibitions on operating this mine that were put forward by regional authorities. In other words, giving it full permission.
Indonesia is one of the countries in the world which is very renowned for its corruption. And companies who look for an immediate profit always hope that they can get along in countries like Indonesia, because it's always possible for them to bribe their way along. And that is exactly what has happened with Tokatindung. Because when they started, they wanted to depart on a permit to release the tailings into the ocean, which was long expired and which belonged to another company, which in the end the people of the surroundings were able to deny, to prevent.
Our position, the position of the people, is clear. We firmly reject MSM.
April 2007, Manado, the capital of North Sulawesi. New demonstration. Revoldi Koleangan is the executive director of the People's Alliance Against Tailings and Mining, Amalta. The foreign crews that are interested in the Tokatindung mine don't need visas. He, however, is constantly observed and threatened, but always willing to take part in any of the few interviews that come up.
Yes, we created the Amalta project after sending out an information letter to the populations concerned by the project. On September 18, 2005, we had a big meeting and decided to get organized. As we speak, Amalta counts over 27,000 members spread throughout the 7 departments of North Sulawesi.
At the time, in 2007, the governor of North Sulawesi, who was very sensitive to the environmental issues at stake, supported Amalta and the population of the region in their battle against MSM.
My dear brothers, you're opposed to the MSM's mining operation. My dear brothers, from the very beginning, I've been opposed to this mining operation. Because a big part of the population is opposed to this mining operation. I love my people. I love you, my dear brothers. This mine is not the only source of prosperity for North Sulawesi.
Since then, he's changed his mind. He is no longer opposed to the mine's entry into production, and yet he was right in 2007. The population of the region doesn't need the mine economically. It was only to create about 100 local jobs, and the gold of Tokatindung will surely not stay there. It is estimated that since antiquity, 165,000 tons of gold have been extracted from the depths of the earth, about 70% of that amount since 1950. About a third of the gold has been lost. Another third is conserved in the form of jewelry or art pieces. The rest is hoarded today by states and private owners. The French alone own somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 tons of gold. They're nest eggs in the form of coins and bars, and they're kept stashed away. If we melted all of the gold in the world into a single unique block, we'd have a cube of about 20 meters on each side. Gold is a unique raw material. It's the only product that is accumulated. The others are consumed. Gold, then, has a very particular life.
For a long time, it was a raw material. Let's say in the second half of the 20th century, it was a raw material. It had actually dozed off a bit in the 1981 in France, after the end of the oil crisis. Interest rates rose, the gold market slept, and it was no longer a raw material for jewelry and so on. Most analysts, until very recently and still today, consider it exclusively a raw material. But we're beginning to see that this is no longer the case, because recently, gold has been leading its own life. Its price soars in euros and dollars, despite the fact that the dollar may suddenly gain or lose value. So I'd say that gold is becoming a currency.
As in 1944. At the time of the Bretton Woods Agreement, the United States held 3/4 of the planet's gold reserves. Exchange rates were then fixed according to a standard: gold. $35 for 1 ounce of gold. But in 1971, the American reserve of gold was dwindling fast, and fearing he'd have to redeem the US dollars in circulation for gold, President Nixon ended the convertibility between dollars and gold. That was the end of the gold standard. Ever since, it's been chaos among currencies, and gold has lived its own life. The price of the ounce has doubled in 4 years and gained 30% last year. Gold has become reassuring again.
The true motive, the deeper motive behind the current rise in gold, is essentially the loss of trust in the world's financial and monetary system. So gold has again become a refuge value. It's very interesting to see that during the period known as the subprime crisis, the top refuge value was the dollar. Next, we noticed that a lot of dollars were printed for reflation and a lot of companies were nationalized. So gold started climbing again. And then during the second crisis, when there were doubts over the ability of states to pay off their loans, the dollar was no longer a refuge value. Clearly, gold became the only refuge value.
As wealthy speculators seek to reassure themselves with massive purchases of gold, the fishermen of Amalta win their first victory. The Indonesian Environment Minister has had the wisdom to refuse the initial plan, which was to dump mine tailings into the sea. But storing the poisonous waste on land also represents serious dangers. In the region, volcanic activity is intense, earthquakes are frequent, and flooding, made worse by deforesting the mining zone, is often devastating. Directly threatened by possible seepage, just next to the mine, there's Tangkoko National Park. It is home to numerous protected species, including endangered ones, such as the crested black macaque. Or even other smaller primates, tarsiers. Having appeared 45 million years ago, they fascinate tourists the world over. They even served as inspiration for Spielberg when creating E.T. There are only a few hundred left between the Philippines and the island of Sulawesi. Another source of concern for the population is the water. Gold is one of the top water-consuming industries. In order to extract 1 gram of gold, 50 tons of water are needed. The water tables that provide drinking water to the inhabitants of the region are not inexhaustible. Between the licenses that were issued, contested, withdrawn and then reissued, the hostility on both sides grows. The fever rises, as does the price of gold. On the side of MSM and Archipelago, there are even more intimidation and manipulation tactics. On the opposing side, there are demonstrations and lawsuits.
Over the past years, when the people in the vicinity of the mine succeeded in resisting and preventing the mine always struggled along. And it came to a point where on the international side, the banks who agreed to provide credits also retreated from that promise, due to the people's interference.
That is a victory for the Indonesians opposed to the mine. Under pressure from the demonstrations and hounded by NGOs that remind them of their ethical obligations, certain banks, including big French banks, withdraw their shares from Archipelago. The company bled dry, then issues new equity. In early 2010, the Indonesian company Rajawali became its majority shareholder. Its founder, Peter Sondak, appears as the savior of Archipelago MSM. He relaunches the Tokatindung project.
This very rich person also has a very strong political influence in Jakarta, so what can I say?
Peter Sondak knows how to make friends. The governor, who a few months ago had acknowledged his brothers in the fight against the mine, suddenly became extremely low-key. The alliance continues to fight. It sues the Environment Ministry, which issued mining permits. It deems this illegal. Complaints were filed at the KPK, the Anti-Corruption Commission, against certain senior civil servants. While awaiting judgment, the MSM cannot, in theory, operate. And yet, the beginning of the operation is still scheduled for March 2011. Let's not forget, the price of gold now exceeds $1,400, and the world is waiting for more and more. Return to London, to the World Gold Council. This organisation brings together the world's leading mining companies. It closely observes the fluctuations in the gold market. In the plush offices of Old Broad Street, in the heart of the city, they relish the flagrant rise in price, and the association members' virtually risk-free increase of wealth.
It's true, like, well, many commodities, there's no yield on gold. It's not a bond or a stock, so there's no dividend or interest rate. But then that's true of any metal. So the drivers for understanding gold and other metals are not to do with yield. They're to do with demand and supply. And on that basis, gold is very attractive because mine production is declining in the long term. There's a lack of new discoveries of gold on the mining side, so you have a declining supply profile. And at the same time, as I said earlier, you've got strong demand at the moment. You've got strong demand in jewellery from Asian countries. And remember, throughout the whole credit crunch, China and India, for example, have continued to grow, and people have become wealthier in those countries, unlike in the West, where there's more of an issue with recession and with sovereign debt issues. So you're seeing jewellery demand remain very strong in Asia. That's driving the market.
Even in London, in the Indian quarter, there are countless jewellery shops. India is the world's top consumer of gold, at 440 tonnes in 2009, and that's counting jewellery alone. Private wealth in gold is quite considerable there. The wedding season in India, from November to March, has a strong influence on the global demand of gold.
In our Asian, Indian, and all type of Asian Dubai jewelry is for the good luck, to start a new life, or any good occasions, even for wedding anniversary or anything like to do with for the good faith. So we always start with gold.
In a situation of ever-increasing demand, the Reserve Bank of India bought 200 tonnes of gold from the IMF in 2009 to supply the jewellery market. The global demand for gold in 2009 reached 3,400 tonnes, over 50% for jewellery, 11% for industrial and dental uses, and the rest, having risen sharply, reached nearly 40% for investment purposes. But the problem resides in finding all this gold. There is a lot here in the coffers of the US Treasury, but it's not exactly up for sale. Washington prefers to keep its reserve of 8,000 tonnes tucked safely away. It's the greatest reserve in the world, almost 1/4 of the reserves of all the central banks. The Bank of France isn't too far down the list, coming in 5th at 2,435 tonnes. But the demand grows constantly from countries increasingly leery of the dollar, like China. They are the world's leading gold producer, but plan on multiplying the reserve in their central bank by 6, and their own production will not suffice. So they'll jump on any gold that's up for sale, and they're not alone.
Effectively, if you look at it, it means there's a shortage of gold now from the central banks of nearly 400 tons a year, because they were selling about 450 tons. Now they seem to be selling about 40 tons, or even in some quarters buying. So you've seen a complete shift on the supply side from the central banks, which is obviously positive for the market because it strengthens the gold market.
So gold. There's not enough to go around. That's nothing new, but what is new is that the known reserves in the world are estimated at less than 22,000 tons. At the current pace of extraction, there's only 10 years' worth left. In recent years, the profitability of gold mines has dwindled sharply. Costs go up about 15% every year, especially energy costs, but also the cost of chemical products and wages. Let's head for Salsigne, near Carcassonne. It was the last French gold mine. It had to close in 2004. Firstly, because it was no longer profitable, but also because of the pollution. The site, now in rehabilitation, is still under surveillance. This task is assigned in France to the Office of Geological and Mining Research, the BRGM, which operates on behalf of the state.
Let's go down a bit more. We're almost there. There, that's perfect. Why did the mine close? For 2 reasons: environmental reasons, but mostly because of the price of gold on the international market, which was very, very low. So there was a lack of profitability. And it's true that profit is at the very core of this domain.
It was the last, unique and only. The French mine of Salsigne in the Haute department is closing today. It's the end of a mining operation that lasted 2,000 years, as it was the Romans who discovered the seam. Industrial mining at the site, however, truly dates back to 1909. A century later, the pollution of the site is real. As you'll discover, there was actually very little gold in Salsigne, but a lot of waste.
In Salsigne, some thought they'd be rolling in gold, but now they're weighed down by pollution. There's toxic ore put away here 60 years ago. Since then, on this lunar landscape, everything has stopped growing.
There's arsenic, copper, lead, zinc, lots of metals are present on the mining site of Salsigne.
All of it out in the open?
All of it out in the open, left untreated.
Considerable efforts were made to diminish the pollution, but every year a ton of arsenic is discharged into the Orbiel River. There remain over 1 million tons of waste spanning the site's 50 hectares.
Cases of drinking water intoxication were signalled as early as 1965. A few years later, an abnormal number of lung cancers were detected in the hospital of Carcassonne. But it would take nearly 20 years to recognise that these illnesses were due to arsenic poisoning. Even today, the vegetables of the Orbiel Valley are unsuitable for consumption.
This is what's left of the underground mining site, with different sorts of carts. And I can actually see that it hasn't been completely cleaned yet. It definitely will be. We must note that at the time, the priority was preserving jobs, and it's true that in those years, the environment wasn't much of a priority for everybody. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that the first big environmental law was passed in 1976. And in the mining field, it wasn't until the 90s that good modern mining practices were put in place.
The Salsigne mine supplied over 110 tons of gold since its industrial operations began in 1909. But it supposedly still holds about 30 tons, enough to arouse the desires of some people today.
If gold continues rising, we could reconsider developing certain gold mines in France. and also retreating some old piles of tailings. It would be worth retreating them. We wouldn't even have to crush them if they're very fine. We just have to process them with cyanide to produce gold. All while knowing, however, that the environmental constraints make it very difficult in terms of public acceptance. Absolutely solid projects will be necessary and certainty that there will be no potential impact.
Big mining companies don't always have these same qualms. They often prefer using raw material in developing countries where manpower is cheaper, ecological organizations are weaker, regulations are more vague, and the legislation is less constraining. But the law of profit does not only concern the giants of the sector. Let's go back to a few kilometers from Tindung in Indonesia. Also encouraged by the soaring price of gold, small artisanal and informal mines such as this one are spreading around the deposit. It's a worldwide phenomenon that is very dangerous ecologically. Here, cyanide and also mercury are used with absolutely no precaution or inspection. These small artisanal mines also feed the world's emerging gold supply. And for militants of a completely new cause, one that calls for fair and equitable gold, perhaps this paradoxically is where the future of the metal resides.
We've no need for gold. To put it around our neck, to keep it hidden in a safe, there's no need. However, there are 15 million miners who help 100 million people live. They need it to make a living, and they do, and they only produce 10% of the world's gold. This means that the big mining groups only employ 10% of the population, but produce 90% of the world's mined gold supply. So there's a huge imbalance. Moreover, this artisanal gold produced by artisan miners is extracted rudimentarily and manually. So we can say that the value of a gold bar, which is sold by this artisan miner, will stay in the country it is produced. But for a bar produced by a big mine where everything is imported, whether we're talking about the management, the raw material or the investments, 90% of the profits are exported as dividends. Very little is left there.
Patrick Shine knows this mine in southern Peru very well. It's an artisanal mine, the way he likes them. Welcome to Santa Filomena, to the Sotrami, the company of mine workers. In this dusty desert, at nearly 3,000 meters high, visitors are rare, but always welcome. Even to the weekly miners' meeting. They've nothing to hide.
Hello everyone. Starting next week, earmuff hearing protectors are mandatory and so are safety goggles. As far as safety is concerned, there is no group leader or engineer in charge of safety. It is each of your responsibility. Don't think this is work that can be rushed because that's when accidents happen.
The Sotrami was founded in 1989, initiated by former informal miners. They gathered together as a co-op and went through the long legalization journey to get an official concession from the Peruvian state. Today, the Sotrami belongs to 168 joint shareholders. Peru is the world's 5th producer of gold, counting 180 tons in 2009. The Santa Filomena mine, with its 115 annual kilograms, is a small player, but they've got something here that the other miners in the world don't always have: pride.
I am a shareholding member of Sotrami. I'm also an owner of the concession and everything we've acquired with the business.
Luis runs the mine's engine. He's no longer a young man, so he doesn't go down to its depths, but his role is essential.
It's the heart of the mine. I'm going to start it now. It's going to make a lot of noise. Move back. Yes, down at the bottom it's a lot tougher. That said, nowadays it's easier. It's no longer like it used to be. Now there are changes. There are electronic machines. Before we had to work with our own hands, with a sledgehammer and a drill, and we carried everything on our backs.
It's still very tough. There's a hazardous 30-minute descent on foot to get further than 800 meters below the ground, and there are very few machines.
Look, this is the seam we extract from. It's where the gold is. That's the ore from which we extract the gold. Roughly speaking, there's 1 gram per bag of ore, more or less. Per ton, there's about an ounce of gold. We select the ore we extract and take it to the station for treatment. There it's processed with cyanide and carbon.
Inevitable cyanide. Once the ore is extracted, it is crushed, finely ground, and like in Tokatindung, dissolved in cyanide. The resulting matter, activated carbon particles for gold recovery, is sent to a gold smelter in Lima, which extracts the gold and resells it, depending on the price of gold. $1,400 an ounce at the moment, of which about $1,000 go back to the Satrami. That makes the average wage here about €300 a month, a lot more than the average Peruvian salary, with some perks, health insurance and a pension fund. And the shareholding owners have also organised the job traditionally reserved for women, the sorting, to be humanised a bit. 65 of them came together as an association. The balaqueras have a very hard job, but they've more dignity than in other places. Here they have a contract, a salary, and social protection coverage.
We have to pick up everything they throw, the rocks. There are many women who work here and up there too, because most men work inside in the mine. It's dangerous. We wear a scarf to protect us from the dust, and the helmet and clothes to protect us a bit.
The village was created by the miners themselves. It is brand new. Before, they lived near the treatment stations a few kilometers away, but they moved to avoid any contamination risks. Today, 3,000 people live in Santa Filomena. They are all dependent on the Satrami, of course. It is responsible for the playground, the garbage collection, the installation of electricity, and the organisation of shuttles with cities in the valley. There's not much wealth, obviously, but it represents immense progress compared to the mud houses of the past. In Santa Filomena, gold has brought happiness.
We see that there's a great demand for gold. People acquire a lot of gold. That's why the price is rising.
Like all miners, Luis carefully follows the price of gold. But the yellow metal has never driven him crazy. He simply knows that it allows him to live, and he dreams only of progress for himself, his family, and his peers.
What worries us the most is what we lack the most of in Santa Filomena. What we lack the most is of the most important and vital thing for our health and our lives: water. Water has a price here. It is perhaps just as precious as gold.
In Santa Filomena, there's one more thing: the solidarity among miners and wives of miners, shareholders or not. With the money of some and the loans of others, Isa Torisla was able to set up a small boarding home. and her husband is able to have a peaceful retirement.
I settled here to help him. I was a sorter in the mines. I used to make him meals. Afterwards, I opened my boarding house. Now, everything is better. My children were little. I was able to provide them an education.
In Santa Filomena, Isa's children aren't the only ones to attend school. Here, school is mandatory for everyone. And Julio Cesar Melgar doesn't take discipline lightly. He knows that this small village is experiencing a true miracle. Since 2004, not one single child has worked in or around the mine.
The ore that is mined by the fathers is sufficient to respond to the needs of the families, so the children don't have to work. They earn a good living. It is quality gold. There is enough of it. That's why the company doesn't want the children to work, so that the gold can be fair trade, so that it can be worth more far away.
The Santa Filomena project is supported by the International Labour Organization. The Satrami is also counselled by several NGOs to come up with solutions for issues that still arise, particularly those concerning the storage of cyanide or mercury tailings. Here, they listen to a new concept coming from very far away from Europe: fair trade gold. A promising new market is emerging. Jewellers have become aware that it's better to buy gold that is socially clean and a bit more ecological, even if it means buying and selling it for a higher price to more responsible clients. When the fair trade gold label is worked out, the gold of Santa Filomena, clearly identified, will certainly be worth a few more dollars. Very far from Peru, in the suburbs of Antwerp, the environmental problematic is not exactly the same. We're at the Umicore plant. Here too, gold is made. But it's recycled gold. It already accounts for nearly 40% of the global supply. For gold can be infinitely recycled. We can remelt any old piece of jewellery without losing a milligram of gold, and also industrial waste. At Umicore, the debris arrives in hundreds of tons.
When it comes to gold, to us, it's a starting point for everything. Electronic rubble that comes from dismantling computers and other electronic material. Printed cards, as you can see here, whether crushed or not, can contain from 30 to 400 grams of gold per ton of matter. 1 kilogram of gold accounts for the gold content of roughly 50,000 cell phones. Here there are a few cards, over there a few connectors that contain gold. We look at the individual components that contain precious metals. What we're looking at here is equivalent to about 150 kilograms of gold dust. The gold comes out in the form of refined gold, 99.99% pure, either in the form of a 1 kilogram ingot or a 12.5 kilogram ingot.
The gold shot or ingots are almost completely pure and don't pollute too much, but they're not necessarily clean.
No, everyone will say that recycled gold is clean, but, well, there were maybe 10 slaves or 10 prisoners of a Caesar who died extracting it. Or maybe they could be traced back to a crematorium in Auschwitz or Burkina. You never know where it comes from. So clean gold does not exist, no. However, social gold does, and it provides a living for 100 million people in the world.
Unlike Peruvian miners or metal workers in Antwerp, the fishermen of Sulawesi will never live off the gold of Tocotindung. They and their environment even risk dying from it. In 2008, Archipelago estimated the extraction costs at $328 per ounce of gold. Today, the ounce is negotiated at around $1,400. The margin is motivating enough, but the price of gold is getting completely out of hand.
How far will the madness go? It's difficult to predict. How about $6,000 or perhaps $8,000, we don't know. It could happen in 2 years, it could happen in a year, 3 years.
The inhabitants of the region won't be able to battle for much longer against the torrents of profit to come. The fight is too uneven.
What is certain, from what we've understood of the government's information, is that the mine will be running one way or another. So anyone who opposes it can expect to come across some trouble.
The gold that will come from Tokatindung, starting in 2011, will no doubt be kept in the form of gold bars in the vaults of the Chinese central bank, as a necklace around an Indian bride, or in coins as a nest egg in France. Foreign investors, a few wheeler dealers, and surely a few Indonesian politicians will become wealthier along the way. But the Chinese banker, the Indian bride, and the French investor still don't know about the millions of tons of toxic waste abandoned in this small part of paradise. Here, there's no doubt. It was indeed the gold that had the man.